Dillian the Body Snatcher White here. It's a champ. Big up to Sporting Icon. Subscribe. Otherwise, I might pay you guys a visit.
So I've got an article here and a statement from a lady who works at Ukad. She's some kind of chief over there at Ukad. And I don't quite understand what it is that she's trying to get at. And some of the things that she's saying is pretty bizarre. When she's talking about Dillian Whyte, it's like the whole case is like apples and pears. I don't know why she's using that kind of analogy. That totally miffs me. I can only presume that she's saying that every single case has its own merit, etc., etc., as in no two cases are ever the same. So every case warrants its own investigation. So if that's the case, why not just say that? I don't understand the whole analogy with apples and pears. Now, she was kind of drawing comparisons with the fact that with Dillian Whyte, he's like apples, and Liam Cameron is pears. I mean, it's stupid. I mean, Liam Cameron, they found some traces of cocaine in his system. Whether he did something, whether he didn't, how the hell do I know? But he gets a 4-year ban. 4 year for a first-time offence. 4 years is pretty excessive, isn't it? And pretty much, he's now a retired fighter now, this young man, because UK gave him a 4-year ban for using cocaine. Now, I'm not an expert on PEDs, I'm not an expert on recreational drugs and that either, but the fact is that 4 years for using a bit of cocaine seems pretty excessive to me. When you bear in mind, Tyson Fury, he admitted that he'd done cocaine and he gets a 2-year backdated ban. But Liam Cameron, who's saying he didn't do anything, gets a 4-year ban. So how does that work out? Because within this statement, this lady's saying that this cases are not based on whether or not the people who are in question have more money than others. Well, it looks like it could be. If Tyson Fury, who admits it, got a 2-year ban, backdated of course, and Liam Cameron, who said I didn't do anything, gets 4-year. How does that work out? What, because Tyson Fury admitted it and Liam Cameron doesn't, therefore Liam Cameron, he gets a double the punishment? That doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense. And with Dillian Whyte as well, it's a case of, for me, I don't trust Ukad. I don't trust them whatsoever. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know what goes on behind the scenes with Ukad and the British Boxing Board of Control and this, that and the other, because I don't. But all I can do is come up with my own observations or speculations based on my observations, is probably the best way of putting it. So what I see is that if anybody has an adverse finding in their system, it's supposed to be kept private. Okay, this is the rules of Ukad. Now, bearing in mind, Ukad are employed by the British Boxing Board of Control. Okay, so regardless of where this leak came from with Dillian Whyte, when it should have been confidential, would I be right in presuming that it's come from either Ukad or the British Boxing Board of Control? Because these two, as a collaboration, would have known before anybody else. So somewhere along the line, somebody within the British Boxing Board of Control or Ukad had to have got hold of Thomas Hauser or people within his team to leak the story. Why would they do that? Again, I can only presume money, right? So again, what she's talking about with money doesn't ring true with me. It really doesn't. Now, I'm not going to sit here and accuse anybody of this, that and the other, but it seems pretty obvious to me. Obvious from what it is that I know. But as I said, I don't know everything, so how obvious is it really? Who knows? But the thing is, when you look at this whole situation, now I haven't really spoken about this before, I've been kind of holding it back for quite some time, but the thing is, when I look at it, certain things stand out, and as I said before, they seem pretty obvious. I don't mean it's true, it just means from my perspective, it's obvious. I'll give you an example. When Tyson Fury, he took on Deontay Wilder, most of us know that Tyson Fury, he won that fight and he got awarded a draw, unfairly, okay? And then after that fight, the WBC ordered an immediate rematch. There are reasons for it. Could it be a case of, well, they feel that Wilder, he nearly got Tyson Fury out of there. Having Tyson Fury on Wilder's resume is a good way of legitimising his WBC reign. So, therefore, in the rematch, you'll get him. Or they feel Tyson Fury won that fight and therefore they're not happy with the result. Therefore, get the rematch done. Tyson Fury, go get your belt. We want you to be our champion. It could be that way. Or it's a case of, because Tyson Fury, he does bring a lot of attention and a lot of money. So, ordering the rematch. Now, that rematch didn't happen straight away. But What we do know is that Wilder and Fury agreed to a rematch. Not just a rematch a year later, so the next rematch will happen on February 22nd, but then a third fight, so another fight later on this year. At, I guess, September time maybe? Now, that caused a bit of a problem, didn't it? Because Dillian Whyte, he'd already had an agreement that should he beat Oscar Rivas, then he'll get a fight in May 2020. So smack bang in the middle of Wilder Fury 2 and Wilder Fury 3. Dillian Whyte being there, getting his world title shot, scuppers part 3, doesn't it? Because if he beats whoever is the champion at that time, that really messes things up. And what WBC don't want to do is step on the toes of Al Heyman, the PBC, Bob Arum, Frank Warren, whoever. Okay? I don't know exactly who, but again, it's all perception. So the best way to ensure that Wilder Fury 2 and 3 happens is if Dillian Whyte doesn't get his world title shot. That's the best way of doing it. But as had already promised him, well, you beat Oscar Rivas, you'll get your title shot. So the best way to do it is to remove Dillian Whyte from the situation. Now, what they can't do is come out and say, well, actually, you know what, we've changed our mind now, Dillian. Yes, you've beaten Oscar Rivas and all this, that and the other, but now you're not going to get a world title shot until after Wilder Fury Part 3. And the best way to do it is, well, we're going to suspend you for it. Because the public would then look at WBC and go, but why? Why are you suspending Dillian Whyte for? What's he done wrong? Why have you promised Dillian Whyte something and then just went back on your word? So the best scenario for this whole situation is if a private situation with Dillian Whyte and Ukad becomes public. Then you can use that as a, well, this is what's happened. Now we're going to suspend you. Now we're going to ensure Wilder Fury Part 2 and Part 3 happens. And even if you win the case, Dillian, you're still not going to get your world title shot until February 2021. So it solves all that issue. Now, my point of this one is a case of, for it to go public, very convenient, right? A case that's supposed to be private, very, very convenient and was needed. Correct? Because as I said, that's the only way that they could have pushed Dillian Whyte to the side, even though he'd already been promised in black and white that he's going to get a world title shot in May 2020. So, suspend Dillian Whyte. Now, within that period of Dillian Whyte being investigated, inverted commas, investigated, they awarded Tyson Fury mandatory position. When Tyson Fury never asked to be mandatory, and even Tyson Fury said himself, why make me mandatory for? I've already got the fight. So a fight with Wilder and Fury had already been set up, but they decided to put Tyson Fury as mandatory. How does that work out? But who did that? Who petitioned for that to happen? Charlie Giles. Didn't you, Charlie? You petitioned for Tyson Fury to become mandatory for Deontay Wilder, even though Charlie Giles, who is chairman of the British Boxing Board of Control who employ Ukad, and Charlie Giles, not only is he chairman for the British Boxing Board of Control, but he's also vice president to the WBC. Again, Charlie, not accusing anybody, but it's very suspect, isn't it? I mean, at a bare minimum, I think Charlie should at least be put on the stand and ask some questions. Say, what is it that you know and what is it that you don't know? That's pretty much all I'm saying about it, Charlie, because it seems pretty suspect to me. Pretty suspect. Everything seemed to work out how the WBC really wanted it to go. How the PBC would have wanted it to go. How ESPN, Top Rank, Bob Arum, Frank Warren, etc. would have wanted it to happen. Because they didn't want Wilder 2 and Wilder 3 to have any kind of issues. And the reason I'm saying that is because, go back to the beginning of what it is that I said, everything's supposed to be kept private. And who would have known behind the scenes what was going on with Dillian Whyte? Ukad, of course, because these are the ones who's doing the testing, and the British Boxing Board of Control, because they employ Ukad. Correct? So somebody within the British Boxing Board of Control and Ukad leaked that information. Now, I'm not saying it was Charlie Giles, not at all. As far as I'm aware, Charlie Giles is a pretty stand-up guy, to my knowledge. But what I am saying is, Charlie, that I think some questions need to be asked. Now, I invited Charlie onto the channel a few weeks ago, and I just get a reply, no, ain't gonna happen. Can't help you. No, well, I can't make it on this date, but we'll rearrange for another time. No, nothing like that. A flat no. And I think he knew why, because I was going to ask him this question, which is, what's going on? Why and who leaked it to Thomas Hauser? Because for Tyson Fury to become mandatory, the whole Dillian Whyte situation had to be made public. It had to be made public. It's the only way that WBC can get away with it. Were there brown envelopes? Was Dillian Whyte set up? Was he stitched up? It looks like he was. But in truth, I don't know, do I? How do I know? I'm only here asking the questions. I don't have inside information. But the fact is, going back to this statement where she's saying that it's not based on money and this, that and the other, well, why else would Thomas Hauser have found out then? I'm pretty sure, well, I can presume at least, that Thomas Hauser or members of his team paid somebody to leak the information. Because nobody's just going to get off their own back and call Thomas Hauser of all people and say, hey, guess what? Dillian Whyte, there's an adverse finding with his sample. Who's going to do that without any benefit to themselves? Nobody would do that. It's human nature to be selfish, isn't it? It's human nature to try and line your own pockets. So somebody within Ukad and the British Box Board of Control, in my opinion, leaked that information to Thomas Hauser. Because it's not like Thomas Hauser works for Ukad and done the test himself, is it? And as I said before, is there a conflict of interest with Charlie Giles being chairman of the British Box Board of Control and vice president of the WBC, knowing the full situation, and then trying to push for Tyson Fury to replace Dillian Whyte as mandatory? Even though Dillian, innocent until proven guilty, even though Charlie Giles, chairman of the British Box Board of Control, would have known that Dillian Whyte was cleared to fight Oscar Rivas and would have known that he was innocent. That's my point. I find the whole thing very, very shady. And I think people need to be asked questions about this. Dillian Whyte's reputation has been dragged through the mud. And even though, yes, Ukad have now put out a statement and clearing him and this, that and the other, and so have the WBC and this, that and the other, yeah, a little too late really, isn't it? Because a lot of people still feel that he's done something wrong. I still see crap now of people accusing him of doing something and then paying them off to clear up a B sample, again, inverted commas, even though he was cleared to fight. The whole thing's very suspect to me. So again, going back to the statement from this lady, trying to act like everything is cool and everything is legit and everything is this, that and the other, well, clearly it isn't, is it? Because Dillian Whyte got stitched up bad. Bad, bad. Now, had the WBC have come out after Dillian Whyte got cleared, after 5 months of absolute hell, and said, okay, we're going to reinstall your date for May 2020, rather than continue with February 2021, I probably wouldn't really be asking too many questions, to be fair. I'll probably go, okay then, so it's got nothing to do with Wilder Fury 2 and Wilder Fury 3, but in my opinion, looking at it, it bloody well has, hasn't it? And as Charlie Giles, as the WBC put your name in the article, in their statement, Charlie Giles petitioned for Tyson Fury to become the mandatory. Well, you work for the British Boxing Board of Control. Do you have Dillian Whyte's best interests at heart? Are you Team Whyte? Maybe he is. Maybe he is. Maybe he's been petitioning behind the closed doors to the WBC saying, Dillian Whyte needs his world title shot. You should be doing this. Maybe he recognised something was going wrong with the WBC and thought, right, okay, well, let's just ensure a Brit in Tyson Fury getting a mandatory. Maybe. I don't know. As I said, I offered him the opportunity to come on and he just point blank refused because he's too good for that. He's above that, isn't he? I offered Mauricio Suleiman as well. Not even a reply. Anyway, that's my thoughts. You drop me yours. Click thumbs up, subscribe. Catch you all on the next video.